Good afternoon, and welcome to the Insight Teen Hour. It is Monday afternoon, 2 p.m., and you're listening to KHTS 98.1 FM. I'm Frederick. I'm from Insight Treatment Programs here in Santa Clarita Valley. We have an intensive outpatient program in the community, and we're helping teens and families get through mental health issues and drug and alcohol issues. And today in the studio, we're of course going to talk about things related to teen mental health. We always do that on Mondays at 2 p.m. at the Inside Teen Hour. But today I have two very special guests. Finally, or not finally, but it has been a while since we've had some parents and some teens from our program come on the show and sort of express some of their journey, or talk to us about some of their journeys that they've gone through, some of the struggles they had early on, and some of the things that they have worked through. So I'm very happy today to have Naeem in the studio and his mom, Molly, who's here. And I also in the studio today have Lisa Dixon, who is in charge of our intake and discharge coordinating. And Lisa spends a lot of time talking to parents about some of the some of the things that they're going through as they're considering starting treatment. So Lisa is here to help me out and make sure that we talk about some interesting subjects. So I would love to sort of get an idea. I'd love to, for the audience to get an idea of what it means to be a teenager, or before that, what it means to be young and struggling with some sort of depression or anxiety. And Naeem, I know you've gone through a lot before you started treatment at Insight. Probably, what is that? That was last year around this time, in October or August, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I
Right?
think so.
Yeah. So, but Naeem, tell us a little bit about what was it to be you in like third grade or fourth grade or some early on in your life.
Well, it wasn't much different from how I thought other people kind of went through life. I didn't really realize that there was something, I guess, different about me and the way I thought until, say, about fifth grade.
Hmm.
Um, and so earlier on, I just kind of, um, you know, never really paid attention to it. Um, and about in fifth grade is when I realized that, you know, the thoughts in my head, um, and kind of like what I thought about on a daily basis wasn't normal, I guess. Um, and so that's about the time where everything started to spiral and everything, I guess, kind of got worse for me. Um, at that point, I felt like an outsider almost, um, because I knew that other people didn't think about the things I did, but I still couldn't understand them. Um, and so it was really hard to relate to other people and just kind of go throughout life. Um,
In fifth grade, when you started feeling, hey, there's something. What were you feeling? What were you experiencing?
um, I don't really remember, it was a while ago, but
Hmm.
suicidal thoughts, a lot of anxiety, and I didn't really understand what that was earlier on, and I'm not sure what kind of flipped that switch and made it easier to understand. That's around the time that it happened.
Hmm. I know a lot of people when they're struggling with anxiety, they feel maybe some buzzing sound or buzzing inside of their body, or they
Mm.
feel that it's hard to concentrate sometimes in school. Some people with anxiety feel, they struggling with feeling angry or feeling sort of irritated all the time. Can you tell us? Do you remember what was it like for you? Was it primarily in school? Was it also at home?
Um, I think primarily at home, but I also felt it at school a lot. And as far as the buzzing you described, I would kind of describe it as almost TV static.
Hmm.
Um, where I knew there was stuff going on in my head. I just couldn't understand it, and I still have that now. Um, where there's kind of thoughts bouncing around in the back of my head, and I can't wrap my head around them. I don't know what they are, and for a while I would describe it as almost like screaming, and so I went to therapy for a little bit. I think around like fifth grade, yeah, third grade.
The first time it started was you were probably closer to kindergarten when
Oh
you
wow.
first started telling us about this screaming feeling, and we took you to a psychiatrist to have it assessed.
Was it primarily screaming in the family, like at the dinner table, or was it, yeah, just all day long? What was it?
It was mostly when I was alone,
Okay.
and there wasn't really too much going on. Is when I would hear it, and it would kind of echo, ring in my head, and it would only get louder. Like the more I focused on it, that would happen um, pretty often.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, right? When you have those feelings or those episode of something, often teens will sort of describe, yeah, I don't know what the heck is going on. I don't understand it. I'm scared of it. I'm shutting it down. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to isolate and try and make it happen somehow, right? But maybe Molly, maybe you could give a little bit of perspective as well. So, what did you and Dad? What did you guys see? Um, what did you guys see come up at an early age?
He was a colicky kid,
Hmm.
but once he passed through that, he was very, very even keel. I mean, you hear his just from his voice, right? You hear the calm.
Hmm.
People really gravitated towards him because he seemed like such a mellow, calm, easygoing person to be around. Wonderful friend, supportive, extremely loving, and very easy to raise. And so we really missed, with the exception of when he told us early on that he felt screaming in his head, we really missed the signs that anything was going on because he was just so he was such an easygoing kid.
Hmm.
Um, it was really when he transitioned into middle school that middle school was hard for him, and so we pulled him out and I homeschooled him, and that's when the anxiety was really noticeable. Was when it hit the middle school years, and that's when we started to get concerned. But it didn't feel like it was this huge concern. It just felt like, well, let's figure this out. Let's see how we can support him academically. Like, we really weren't clued into what was going on
No.
inside of him, or the suicidal ideation. That was so far beyond our scope
Yeah.
of understanding that our kid was going through this. And so when a year ago when it came up, it was a shock.
Hmm. I mean, I think what you're describing, a lot of parents are describing, right? They didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of signs. Um, like with you, Naeem, things were going okay. People were attracted to you in school. You were hanging out with people. You were even keeled, as Mom describes, right? It seems like everything was okay, but
Mm-hmm.
internally, um, you knew or you felt that, hey, there was something else going on, right? And just so I understand, Naeem, what made you say to Mom and Dad back then? Oh, so the grades were dropping. Is that right? So grades were dropping. That made you guys alerted. Hey, there's something more to it. But when did you come out and say to Mom and Dad, hey, look, I feel like somebody's screaming in my head. I feel. When did you actually start talking about that and opening up about that?
I'm not really too sure. I remember uh, being in therapy for it, but I don't remember when I had gone to them and told them. It was kindergarten,
It was
I think
very
you
young.
said. Yeah.
And then
Okay.
he said it. Oh, it kind of went away. But he's somebody that never, I think, really wanted to burden anybody with his stuff. So he just kept it to himself and said he was fine and didn't talk to us about it. And it really was like sixth grade, where he definitely, the anxiety seemed to ramp up, and then the pandemic hit. And he was home, and the depression was very evident when he was at home. And that's when he went into therapy for the first time, with an online therapist that, and that wasn't really, that run was not a successful run in terms of providing him the support he needed. And we just didn't really recognize, how much he was struggling. We talked with our friends, and everybody's kids were home, and everybody was, had low level depression. And of course, they can't see their friends, they're stuck in the house. And, everybody has anxiety right now because we don't know what's happening in the
That's right.
world.
No,
And,
you're right.
my husband and I were doing marriage counseling online during that time. And so I think, our emotional focus was really centered on that too. And I really didn't see the signs
No,
at all.
makes sense. Naeem, so tell me, when you feel this way, I mean, I know this is a bit of a leading question, but how is it to build up relationships with your peers in school or with mom and dad for that matter when you feel that all this is going on in your head or inside of you? How how is it to build up relationships when you are in that state of mind?
Now or
Back then,
previously?
back then.
Um, I mean, I kind of tried to almost avoid them
Hmm.
as much as possible. Um, and so I'd go through periods of isolating myself for a while, not really talking to anybody, um, because I didn't want to burden anyone.
Yeah.
Um, I did everything I could to kind of stay out of the way. Um, I never really came to people with my issues, and I was just kind of there to listen.
Hmm.
Uh, I also tried my best to help other people, whether that was to get outside of my own head or um, just to feel like less of a burden, which it might have been a mix of both. I'm not sure. Um, it was definitely tough.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, the isolation is obvious, right? A lot of
Hmm.
kids start isolating because it's just so uncomfortable to create relationships and build relationships when you feel that ex- you're not telling them the whole story, right? You can't share all these things with them, and you feel ashamed of whatever goes on inside of you. So it becomes these relationships that you don't really feel that people know you, right? And that they love you for who you are.
Hmm.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
That can be very difficult. Um, Good. And I would just want to say, I know you were helping other people and sort of talking to other kids, and I think that's extremely important. There was a thing that I forgot about when we just started the show, and that is to sort of stress the importance of you guys being here, because I really believe that teens talking to other teens is the most powerful way that we can help other teenagers who are struggling through. Um, I think the whole idea of a lot of teens, they don't feel they can relate to a therapist that shows up and or a counselor that shows up and says, "Hey, I know what you're going through. Don't worry. I'm here to." Yeah, right. You're laughing, Naeem, but isn't that true? It's like, nah. What I believe, and I think you believe the same. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here. That there's such a power in teens talking to other teens that they can build up a relationship with and say, hey, look, this is how I felt. This is what you're going through now is exactly what I've been going through. You think that you're all alone with all this stuff, and you think that you're the only one who's going through this, but reality is I've been there, done that, right?
Hmm.
So that peer support is just so, so, so important as part of going through all this stuff, right?
I
And
couldn't have gotten through this year without the peer parent support.
yeah, that's a good point. Exactly. It's not just for the teenagers, it's for the parents as well, right? Lisa, maybe you can talk a little bit to that. I know you are remote out there,
Hmm.
but maybe you can talk about or uh,
Yeah.
give some input as to why it's so important also for parents to find a group of other parents that are going through some of the same things.
Hmm. Yeah, a couple of things stood out to me also when Naeem was describing, feeling like a burden. And I think that came up a couple of times, and Molly also referenced that. And that's one thing that I have noticed in the years that I've worked at Insight and, meeting with families, teens, and their parents, is that that's somewhat of a common thread, is that the teens often feel like a burden if they go to their parents to discuss what's going on with them internally that they feel uncomfortable about. And I just wanted to say that in my experience, that is often one of those unspoken messages that I see. Parents are very stressed out. They're often really preoccupied with work and career. And, living in Los Angeles, I would say the majority of families have to have, two incomes, and then trying to keep up with, wanting to make sure that your kids are doing well in school and, meeting all of their needs. I think sometimes it just doesn't leave enough room for emotional availability.
Mm-hmm.
And that our children often feel like they can sense how stressed their parents are, and that how hard they're working, and that there's spoken messages as well as unspoken messages that they're receiving about how much their parents are sacrificing for them. And so I think that also adds to this sense of, wow, they're doing so much for me, or they're sacrificing so much, or they have all these expectations on me. And naturally, I want them to feel proud of me, or to feel like I'm a good kid and doing right things, so that if I'm feeling some kind of way, maybe I should just keep that to myself, because, they don't need the extra burden of knowing that I'm not feeling so good about whatever it is, or I'm having anxiety, or I'm having depression, or I'm thinking about death a lot, or, I'm struggling with, my relationships at school. Because I think also as a society, we put so much emphasis on succeeding, getting good grades, accomplishing, and to the detriment of building up a strong inner life and emotional intelligence, and, being able to talk about what's going on inside of us. And then we have these expectations about being happy, and fulfilled. And I think there's a big piece that gets missed or lost in translation in that.
Mm-hmm.
And to Molly's point about needing the support of other parents, I know every parent that does eventually come into the program has, these same themes of feeling like, what did I do wrong? Or this intense feelings
Guilt.
of grief and loss because their idea, their image of what life was going to be like, having their baby, their infant, their toddler, like, it's very common, it's human nature, right, to imagine what this family unit is going to be like, and how fulfilling, and how much love. And then when it doesn't look like what we had imagined, I think there's often a lot of judgment and a lot of just trying to control and trying to get something back on track. We have this agenda. And I think oftentimes our children feel that as well. And that's where this part of, our teenagers saying, that's again thematic, we hear all the time, I don't feel seen and heard by my parents. My parents just want me to accomplish things. They don't care about who I really am. They don't care about how I feel. They don't care about what I think. And then it becomes this big disconnect. And anyway, maybe you guys could speak to that. That's just what was coming up for me in this conversation.
Unfortunately, time flies here, so we have to go into a little break now. But when we come back, I think we should hear Molly and Naeem sort of speak to, hey, what does this peer support? What does that really look like? Why is it so important for Mom or Naeem here to meet some other kids? So we'll be back in a few minutes, but you're listening to KHTS 98.1 FM, and this is the Inside Teen Hour. And hang tight, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Inside Teen Hour. I'm Frederick. I'm from Inside Treatment Programs, and today in the studio, I got three great guests. I got Molly, who's the mom of Naeem, and Naeem has been struggling with anxiety and depression through his life, and he's been through treatment at Insight, and has sort of been able to make some huge changes in his life. And he's here today to talk about some of the things he's going through. And Molly is here today to talk to parents about, hey, what has she experienced? What has she learned as a mom of a teen that has been struggling? And, what changes have they had to make in their family? And we got Lisa in the studio here, who is our intake and discharge coordinator. So Lisa and I are just a little curious, when Molly, that's specifically to you. So Naeem gets to a point where he's struggling in school. He's starting to show signs that, hey, things are not going so well. He's expressing that he is struggling emotionally. He's isolating. And you guys as a family have to come to the conclusion, hey, there's something going on here. We need to adjust to this. What does it mean for a mom and a dad to sort of realize, hey, there's something going on here that's outside of the ordinary. We have to change our perspective a little bit. We have to change the direction, and sort of the expectations of where this was going to go is maybe going to change a bit. How was that? Can you talk a little bit to us about that, Molly?
Well, for us, it came to a point where it felt like it was life or death.
Mm-hmm.
He was suicidal. It had reached that point where he was hospitalized, and we were lost. It was the carpet came out from under us, and we didn't know what to do, and so we were just reaching out in every direction, trying to find our way in the dark and try to figure out what's happening, how to move forward. We really didn't understand. Like, we knew that he had been struggling, but it was like all of a sudden just feeling like, where is my boy?
Mm-hmm.
And feeling as though, how could I have been so clueless? What did I miss? And we were really, really fortunate to to come across a program like Insight, and to have that level of treatment as a family, to really, really, really wrap our head around the idea that, what the conclusion that we finally came to is that Naeem was, the canary in the coal mine. Like, he was sounding an alarm to something much larger. And really processing and looking at all the different pieces of our family that
If somebody can hear me, I can't.
that wasn't working. And and to start out and then move in, and to look within ourselves and to say, what part of me is contributing to this dynamic. And when Lisa was talking about the expectations, I mean, that it's huge in terms of the expectations we put on our kids so that we can feel like we've been a good parent.
Correct. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
So much of it is rooted in that. We love our kids so much, but a huge part of it is we think that being a good parent looks like this. And when it doesn't look like this, instead of saying, what is it I'm looking at and what needs to be changed, we instantly go back to this idea of, I must not be a good parent. Yeah. And then it becomes about us, instead of really trying to let our children have their own journeys. We get wrapped up in this fear of, not only fear for them, but fear of, what did I do wrong?
What if you said yourself you felt that you were missing some cues or
Yeah.
missing some important signs that Naeem was showing you at the time? What, looking in hindsight, what do you feel? What do you think that was, or are you clear now and say, you know what, I wish this would have sprung in my eyes a little earlier, or I wish I could have seen this with some different. Like, is there anything where you feel now, that was something I should have done different, or wish I would have known what I know today back then.
Yeah. That's such a hard one
Yeah.
because you run yourself through every scenario
Mm-hmm.
to try to see what was that moment that I missed. And that's a really hard one to answer.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that. I do know the ways that we went in a direction that wasn't serving our family.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know along the way if he was providing the signs,
No.
because I think because there was so much underlying stress in our family
Mm-hmm.
that he was doing everything to not show any signs.
Makes sense.
So,
You just want to be undercover, right, Naeem?
Um,
You just want to be.
you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I also feel like there's almost like a feeling of not wanting to see the signs and
yeah.
Good point.
kind of trying to convince yourself that no, that wasn't a sign, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe that's normal.
Yeah.
And I definitely do feel like I kind of tried to stay out of the way as much as possible, but I
Yeah.
did, put out signs. And I feel that there was some of that, like not wanting to see it and not wanting to see it because you were still kind of clinging to the idea that, you know, you didn't, I guess, mess up
Yeah.
in terms of parenting.
Yeah.
Um, and I also think that was a big struggle in the beginning as well, kind of recognizing everything for what it was.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, I mean, my experience is that often teenagers, they feel, obviously, you guys will tell mom and dad, don't get involved, I'm okay, everything is fine, stay away, I can handle this. But at the same time, there's also that deeper need for people to see you and for people to actually come in and set boundaries and try and change things around and take this seriously. Isn't that right? Like it's that weird push-pull effect that often happens where teenagers often would want to, no, I can do this.
Right.
Leave me the heck alone. Get out of my room. Let me just isolate, let me just do my thing. But at the same time, you're hoping that somebody will take some big measurements and say, no, enough is enough. I'm here, I'm your mom, and I'm here to set a boundary. And I'm sorry, but this is not how we're going to run it going forward.
Yeah.
Now it's my turn to take over because I love you. Sorry, I'm scared, very scared, that something will happen,
Yeah.
right? Is that right? Or in your
Yeah,
case, do you feel there was a bit of that going on? Or
There was a bit of like you said, the push and pull where, I wanted that attention. I wanted to feel that there were people there for me that loved me. But then when they kind of got a little bit too close to what, you know, not only what I was trying to hide from other people, but from myself. And that was the main thing. I kind of pushed everything down or in an attempt to hide it from myself. And so when people got too close to that, it would bring it up for me. And I didn't want to see that.
No.
So I would push everybody away. But yeah, there was that feeling of kind of wanting somebody to say enough is enough and not, I guess, listen to me saying get out, like leave me alone. Kind of push past that and do what needed to be done.
did you ever have or looking in hindsight maybe, Naeem, did you have the feeling that some of your friends from school or that somebody else out besides mom and dad, that would you have hoped that they would have seen something and done something? Like, how do you feel looking in hindsight that your peers, like, how would you help a peer now, today, knowing what you know, compared to how people were helping you at the time?
Well, it's different for every person. And a big part of that is them being ready for help. And often that takes kind of hitting your rock bottom and realizing that, hey, I need the help. But I think before that, there isn't really much you can do, because it is up to the person whether they, at the end of the day, they can be put through, you know, all sorts of programs and go to psych ward, IOP, wilderness, whatever. But if they don't want the help, they're not going to get it.
Okay, fair point. Can I ask you, what was your rock bottom? What did you feel? So obviously, as we talked about, you know, things started spiraling a little out of control. You started arguing more with mom and dad, and things got a little. What was your rock bottom? Where did you feel that things sort of go, whoa, okay, I'm willing to do something here? And
Right.
maybe you didn't even hit that rock bottom. Who
No,
knows?
he
But
didn't. He never really argued with us.
no.
I mean, there was tension, but
Mhm.
he just isolated. And I think going back, that is a big cue, is the isolation.
Okay.
Mm.
Yep. What would you say, Naeem? If there was any rock bottom or sort of,
Right.
what did you feel made a change for you, if anything?
I mean, I feel like there is a rock bottom for everyone.
Okay.
And for me, that was kind of slowly progressing from um, like drinking maybe once a week into um, like getting blackout drunk every single day, and then waking up not knowing where I was and what was happening. Um, and then having to deal with that the day after,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of losing control over myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting sent to the psych ward, waking up there, and once again not knowing where I was, but I didn't have the alcohol and drugs to stop that, to kind of make that feeling go away. And I felt stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And
You were there,
so,
you were at the psych ward quite a bit of. You had like a week there, is that right? Or
it was about, it was
you
around
had a
week,
bit of
yeah.
time there, right? To yeah.
And I also think there isn't any kind of definite rock bottom. Rock bottom's more when you stop digging, when you decide enough is enough.
You give up. You surrender.
Right.
Right. I feel often it's about surrendering. Really,
Yeah.
it's not about taking control of your life and working hard against something. It's more to acknowledge, you know what, whatever I'm doing is not working for me. So I'm open to suggestion. I'm gonna be open to try and do something different. Right.
Right.
And if mom and dad is telling me I have to go to Insight, well, I'll go to Insight, sort of thing, right? I don't like it. It's not my preferred choice, but you know, I'll go. Is that right?
Yeah. You know, everybody has their own journey, and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of have to go through that before they might decide that they want the help. And unfortunately, some people don't get there. Um, but yeah, without that, there's not really much you can do.
No, 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 that's true. And Molly, what would you say, sort of from your perspective? So, did it come as a surprise that he suddenly had to go to the inpatient or go to the hospital? Was that a clear surprise?
Utter
when that
shock.
happened? Utter shock.
We
huh?
had no clue,
No.
you know, and I felt like I've lived a life where I thought I would see the signs with my kids,
Mhm.
and I kept my kids, I thought, really protected from. I really worked to try to keep them, you know, in a safe bubble, and there is no safe bubble.
No.
It just isn't. And so when we found out, it was the day that he was off to the hospital, when he was put on a hold, and the floor went out from under us. I mean, there was no words. I just, suddenly I was plucked out of the world I knew, and didn't know where I was anymore, and just had to really look through a new lens, and evaluate the choices that we were making as a family.
Yeah. Is that where you feel that the peer support you mentioned before, that yes, I also needed to meet other parents who had gone through some of it. Is that where that becomes so valuable, or where in the process of do you feel that the peer support is the most important piece?
Well, one, there's so many stereotypes about what this looks like.
Yes, that's true.
And so when your kid goes off to, say, a hospital, or when your kid reaches a point where they're struggling, you fall into all of those ideas about the stereotypes and the fear of being that family, right?
Yep.
And then I remember the first day we showed, even at the hospital. I mean, the first day I was at the hospital and I was talking with other parents. It was like, wow, your kid's here? Like, you seem normal. You seem like you love your kid, you know? And then when we got to Insight, I remember the first day looking around and feeling like if I was walking down the street, in a million years I wouldn't know that any of these people's kids were here. I mean, these are the people we see in our lives every day, and finding out that, oh, that family is actually at the same, in the same neighborhood as us or down the street. And so first you get past that. You have to break through those stereotypes. And then you got to move through the guilt. And you're all in that guilt together, and you're all processing, what did I do wrong? And to hear other people's stories, and to know that you're not struggling alone. You're not a horrible person. You love your kid. You did the best you could, just like everybody else in the room with you. You're not alone. And that's everything when you don't know what to do in the world, because you feel like your life is over at that point, right? Everything you knew feels over. You don't know that this is just a process you're going to go through, and you can come out on the other side and be better,
True.
At that point, the light is not shining at the end of the tunnel,
No, that's right.
And
it's not there.
they're your company in the tunnel. And then together you see someone else progressing farther along than you, and you're like, oh wow, they're making it through the tunnel. And I'm just, and so it inspires you. It's people to hold your hand. It's people to understand. I mean, the people I love in my life before this happened, who have been a wonderful support for me in my life, did not know how to help me through this process.
No.
And these people were in that. And so it's a different support.
What is your perspective, Naeem, on that peer stuff? Meaning, why do you think it's valuable to meet other kids that have been struggling in the same way?
Right. I mean, it's one of the most important things because, everybody, I feel like everybody kind of hears other people say you're not going through this alone. There's other people going through this, but it's different when you get to see that. And you get to feel like there are people there for you. Maybe for the first time in your life. That's how it was for me. Not only seeing that there are other people struggling with it, which I knew there were, but I didn't feel it.
No. Could that be related? And I'm sorry to not sorry, but I'm bringing this up because this is my, of course, experience. But
Right.
And you feel free to just tell me, no, Frederick, you got that completely wrong. But I feel often it's because people really don't know you for who you are before you start opening up and are able to express your emotional world. Like many kids that start treatment, they don't know what to say. Like, how do you feel? I feel okay. I mean, because they've been shutting it down for so long. They've been disconnecting from that emotional world for so long just to get by, right? Just to
Yeah.
get through the day. So I feel when you start learning to express your emotional world and talk to your peers about how you really feel that day, or what is really going on in your life, or why you don't like your mom, or why you don't like your dad, or why you're frustrated about, then you start feeling that people know you for who you really are.
Right.
And then relationships starts matter. And then you can feel support by other people who will want to be there for you. You can't really do that if you feel that you're living that you have relationships that's not based on who you really are, because you're holding on
Right.
to all these secrets.
Like you said, kind of not knowing how to express yourself. If you've gone your entire life maybe shutting that down or just never learning it because it wasn't there growing up, you have to learn that from somebody. And that's what your peers are there for. And they're also there, I think the biggest part of it is to call you out, because there's a lot of denial when you first start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, for me, a lot of it was maybe they got this wrong. Maybe I'm not like everybody else here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe I'm just like a normal kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way of knowing. How would they know? They're not me. And to kind of have people around you to tell you that you're in denial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can block it out all you want, but it's there everywhere you look. And so eventually you cave.
Yeah.
For the parents too.
Exactly. I was about to say, I'm sure mom is.
A lot of denial there. That's what parent group is all about.
So, unfortunately, we need to go into another little break here, but we'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to KHTS 98.1 FM, and this is the Inside Teen Hour. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Inside Teen Hour. So, in the studio, I got this awesome conversation today about what it means to go through life with some mental health issues and struggling a bit. And I got Naeem in the studio. Naeem, you are 17 now?
I'm 15.
15, only 15. Well done. And so emotionally developed now, right? You can talk about your emotions. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm still working on it, but yeah.
No, that's cool. But Naeem has been in, or Naeem and his mom, Molly, is in the studio. And Naeem was talking about how important it is to have peers and that they can hold you sort of accountable and be in this space where there's other kids around that are growing and that are working really hard on making some changes in their lives. And Molly was sitting sort of smiling and laughing on this backside and nodding her head saying, yes, exactly. That's what it was for us as well as parents. Mm-hmm. We need to be in a space where there's other parents around. So Molly, before, I know we don't have a lot of minutes left, but can you reflect a little bit on that and what is your sort of input on that?
Yeah, it's really just about being with other people who are in that process, who want to grow. You know, you can really get stuck in social circles where people aren't interested. They want to keep it light. They don't want to dig deep. They don't want to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And to be amongst people who are willing to be real and willing to be vulnerable is huge.
It's huge.
It's life-changing.
Yeah, I agree. So, anyway, we have to end now, but on this final note, Naeem, I know you're doing a very brave thing, very cool thing on this Sunday. There's an event called This Is My Brave.
Yeah.
Is that right? Where you have signed up and you're actually going to go in there and also tell your story?
Yeah, I'm going to be performing a bit of my poetry.
So cool. Yeah. And that's on Sunday at 2 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But look up thisismybrave.com. There's a lot more. .org. Sorry. There's a lot more information there.
Yeah, I could be wrong about the time, so might be best to check the website.
Yeah, Lisa, do you remember on top of your head what time it is on Sunday? Oh,
I believe it's 2 p.m. at the Broad Stage in Santa Monica.
Good. I just want to encourage everybody who's listening to go there and support. It's all sorts of the event is all about it's about mental health as such, but also about teen mental health, of course.
Yeah, great cast.
Say again, sorry?
I said there's a great cast, lots of wonderful people.
Exactly. So come and hear Naeem's poetry. And again, I just want to thank both of you guys for really putting aside time and having the guts and the spirit to do this and talk about it, because I think the more people are willing to talk about their journey and talk about their experiences, the more focus we can get on teen mental health, and I think we really need that.
Absolutely.
So thanks to both of you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Naeem,
us, Frederick.
for being brave.